Hey everyone, happy Tuesday. I'm here to talk about the three scenarios that we need to discuss. So the first one is about Mr. Thomas, the principal at the Ferris Lake Elementary, that asked the school counselor to pull out a group of kids to discuss their eating habits and things like that. Um, and he just kind of wants to forego getting parental consent, just because it says in the district handbook that students can be pulled out due to address specific concerns as needed. So I think the ethical dilemma for this scenario is that the principal is asking the counselor to proceed with a group without getting parental consent. And I think that's a big no-no. Um, the principal here is, or the principal, the area that's involved is informed consent. As future school counselors, we know that anytime we are dealing with students or pulling a group, or whether it be individually or in a group, we need to have parental consent. So the dilemma here is that I fear that the counselor might not want to push back on with her principal s- to create unnecessary tension. um so I think that might be an issue, but I do think that this counselor needs to talk to the principal and let them know that, although it states in the district handbook that students can be pulled out to address specific concerns as needed, um, we're bound by a code of ethics that says that we must always have informed consent. And so, the counselor really needs to reach back out to the principal and let her know that she is fine pulling the group, but she will only do so if she's able to get parental consent. Um, The second scenario that I wanted to talk about was about Miss Myrna, who provides counseling to the high school students, and that a student finds her on Facebook and sends her a friend request, and she doesn't want to make him feel bad, so she accepts the friend request. Um, I think the ethical dilemma here is that she accepted a friend request from a student when she shouldn't have. That's kind of crossing boundaries. And I feel like that the principal involved in this one is dual relationships. As a counselor, you don't want to have dual relationships with your students. Um, I think I think it's, the scenario says it in the back of her mind. She thinks that she will now have a better idea of how he is presenting himself to others and not just what she sees in her weekly 30-minute session. Um, I feel like that's not a good enough justification for her to have accepted the friend request. I don't think she should have done it in the first place. Um, I know that she's not trying to make him feel bad, but as counselors, our primary role is to think about what's in the best interest of our students. And in this case, um, her being friends on social media is not a good thing. Um, because I know that she's thinking that, like, oh, he's presenting himself one way, but social media is it's a very fine line because people present themselves on social media based on what they want other people to see. So, yes, she's thinking that, oh, he's gonna present him, that I'm gonna get a glimpse into him, but is she really? Because he might be portraying himself completely different on social media. Um, so I think that what the counselor, Miss Smyrna, needs to do is to remove him from her friends and then maybe pull him aside and have a conversation with him about how it's not um it's not ethical for them to be Facebook friends while he is a student and while he is a current counseling student of hers. Um, and that's actually happened to me before. When I taught third grade many years ago, I had a third grade student who found me on Facebook and she sent me a friend request. Um, and I kind of just ignored it. And, the next day, like, I called home, I spoke to mom, and I said, listen, like, I understand she was probably like excited that she found a teacher. Um, and, although it was super shocking to me that a third grader had Facebook, it wasn't my place to tell her how to parent, but I did tell her, I said, district policy says that we're not allowed to, friend students on social media. Uh, and so I do feel, and I did talk to her and I said, I know you found me on Facebook, but, it's not appropriate, um, for us to be Facebook friends. And so I'm just gonna ignore the request. Um, I know it might have been exciting for you, but it just is not appropriate. Um, and so I feel like I was satisfied with how I handled it. The mom was very apologetic and she said, okay, like I'll talk to her at home too. Um, so yeah, that's happened to me before. Uh, The last scenario that I'm going to discuss is about um, Amy, who's employed by the school district and is completing the observation in a sixth grade class. Um, I think that the ethical dilemma here is that she talks to the school psychologist and the director, and they tell her basically, like, we've already spoken to this parent, no counseling services are warranted. Um, like, there's nothing really wrong with him. Like, he's going to be fine. So don't go against what we said because then you'll make us look bad. Um, and so I feel like this is an issue between colleagues, or I guess in this case, yeah, colleagues. And Amy has to make the decision of, does she go ahead and still talk to the parent about what she notices in her observation? Because she does observe some things. She begins to suspect that the child may have some psychotic features and might be in need of psychiatric evaluation and or residential placement. Um, so obviously there was an issue there, and I don't know what the history is between the director and the parent. Um, Maybe the parent is in denial and doesn't want to accept that her child might need help. Uh, So I think that the principal involved in this scenario is about client welfare and what's in the best interest of the child. Um, I do think that Amy, although she will get backlash from the director, maybe her principal even, um, I think she's ethically bound to reach out to the parent and let her know what the observations were, uh, and the findings that, the child does need help. And I think that despite the backlash, she needs to speak up and she needs to say something, um, because if not, this student is a sixth grader and they're going to go on to middle school. and then possibly even high school without getting the services that they need because of the fear of a possible conflict with the director or of the parent. Um, I've dealt with a similar situation before, and I think that, parents are going to make a big stink for any little thing, whether it's a big issue or a small issue. And I think that the director was in the wrong here because they shouldn't have reached out to the parent and said, "Oh, your kid's fine. They're not going to need anything." Um, but I do think that Amy needs to say something and she needs to provide her professional opinion so that this child can get the services that they need.